Hello. I hope you will be able to see me. I am ready to start. I would like you to just know that we will be doing some movement in this session, but it's not going to be loads. And it is stuff for kids, but I would encourage you to join in and have a go because it really helps to understand what it is that we're doing if you can do exercises. So my name is Emily. Yoga for something like 14 years now. And I got really interested in how we use the body to process traumatic experience. Before I started teaching, I used to work for the International Red Cross and so funny enough, the situation I'm in is kind of a bit because often we were in a sort of state of emergency under lockdown. So we were in a house where we couldn't really interact with other people. When we weren't out to work, we were kind of just in our house. And so it's quite interesting the times we're in now for me. So what my old role used to be very much related to work with people who were feeling very vulnerable and had a lot of trauma and difficult experience going on. So that ranged from prisoners to child soldiers to war wounded to families whose people whose family members were missing. And so that kind of started to translate when I made that transition into working with yoga, which I was already doing, but when I started to make that my main work, I realized there was really an important place rather than working with the people who are already kind of converted and already interested in this stuff. I was really much more interested in working with groups who were finding life challenging in some ways and hadn't really considered that breath and movement could be a really useful way to help their body regulate. So I don't know if you've heard this expression, self-regulation. The way I think of it is we have the power to change the way that we feel. We have an ability with our body, with our breath, to create physiological change and to be able to do that when we're not feeling so great. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't sit with our difficult feelings and be able to understand them. What I found is that with the work that you can do with yoga and body and breath work, it really improves your ability to go inside so that you're much more aware of what it is that you're feeling. And kids get this so much quicker than adults do. And they are really great once they kind of take that feeling on board at actually taking away the things and using them rather than us grown-ups who have a tendency to go, oh, I know it's good for me, but you know, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and sort of not getting round to it. Well, kids, once they've got it, they really get it. Though that doesn't mean they're going to get it straight away. So the things I'm going to show you now, don't be disheartened if your children aren't up for it straight away. I have a big bag of tricks and I can't share all of that with you now, much as though I'd love to. But what I was going to share with you today is some things that really help to work with the feelings of dis-ease, anxiety, and those kind of things that are going on at the moment with both us and children that we live or work with, whether that's our family or we're teachers or carers. And it's really important to know that this sort of approach is really grounded in Porges' polyvagal theory. I believe there's a nice little clip on here on the Healthflix YouTube of him talking about his stuff. So within that theory, it's about how our nervous systems are hardwired to connect. So if we're not feeling okay, our kids aren't going to be feeling okay, and vice versa. So it's really looking at that approach that we can work with us and our children to try and help affect and do what's called co-regulating, helping each other become more regulated, feel better, so we can understand that idea that what we are feeling affects them, what they are feeling affects us. So that can go in a negative way, but we can also use that in a positive way. So What I would say is keep it really simple and don't be disheartened if kids look like they're not paying that much interest or not getting into it. My children, I have started doing a lot more of this stuff with them because, of course, before the lockdown, I was so busy teaching it to everybody else. Yeah, we did things once a week, but we didn't do lots and lots of stuff. And I've seen a massive change. My son is 5, my daughter is 3, and I have seen them actually learn to self-soothe and come to me after they've been upset and say, actually, when I was upset, I did start taking some really big breaths with my tummy, and they really started to take on board that idea that they can really use this superpower, as I call it to kids, to change the way you feel. So the method is the same for us grown-ups as it is for the kids, but talking about it as a superpower really helps with children of pretty much all ages. Everyone likes the superhero and a superpower. So what is this superpower that we can work with? It's so simple, it's easy to forget it. So what happens when we're not feeling good is our breath becomes short, it becomes high up in the chest, it becomes faster. And so as long as that's going on, we're not going to feel good. There's not really a way that we can feel good when that's happening. So just for a moment, think about what it's like when you're having a bit of a kind of sobbing moment. Try breathing like that for a moment. Yeah, it's up here, it's up here. Yeah, so you can feel that, okay? So what we're trying to do is bring the breath further down. So what we're going to do with the breath is trying to relax the face, the chest and the belly, which activates that calm part of our nervous system that helps us to be connected, feel safe, and then we're able to learn in that space, because when we're feeling anxious and wired and triggered, we can't learn. And this is why it's so important for kids, because of course we're all trying to school them at home, or even when they do return to school, there's still going to be a lot of strange things, unfamiliar routines going on. So even though we may be on the way out of lockdown, I think we're quite far from being in a place where everything's just going to run smoothly with ourselves and our children's emotions. Because also, if you look at what the definition of trauma is, it's not the event, it is the reaction after an event. So there'll be this kind of how do I say, like a aftershock, like you get after an earthquake, where we will move through different emotional states for quite some time once the situation seems to be over. And to be fair, it's not going to be over for a while. And I think it's really important to keep up our self-care as parents during this time, because I think it's really easy now, as we've been in lockdown for quite a long time, to start to let things slip or just get too overwhelmed and too tired because we've been doing so much for so long, trying to balance work and kids and all those things. But now is the time to really try and keep a little bit of a few non-negotiable structures into your week, whether that's just having a cup of tea in the morning on your own. If that means putting the TV on for the kids, okay, but have some little things that you really set in that are for you, so that you have some hooks that help you to create your balance, even if they're really small things. Some people it will be long runs or bike rides or maybe a yoga practice, but movement is the key to helping us change the way we feel. So if we can keep those things going now as times become uncertain, and also just let ourselves off the hook a little bit. I mean, as working parents under normal circumstances, let alone the one we're under now, we have to accept that sometimes we're a little bit, I'm not going to say the word, everything. We just have to accept that we need to care for ourselves, drop our standards a bit. And it's okay. I think children are really good for curing us of our perfectionism that we sometimes have, because they just bring us into the present. And, you know, if we're there present with them, they really do relate to that. And if we're busy trying to make things too perfect, they'll let us know, because they won't be okay, because that means nothing to them. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a simple breath work, and then we're going to do some really nice high energy things that are going to help us to meet their energy at a certain place when they're feeling very angry, upset, triggered. Because when any of us are in that state, it's sometimes quite hard to make that journey back into the frontal lobe part of our brain, where we can be rational and calm and work out what it is that we were feeling, reflect on it. And if we find it hard, smaller people find it really hard. So instead of trying to use techniques that keep them really calm, why not try and meet them at a really energetic place and help them to process that high emotion? So I'm going to show you a couple of things that we can do that work in that kind of way too, which are quite fun. And I would encourage you to do them with your children, because kids love it when you join in, and it will help to regulate you as much as it helps to regulate them. So we're going to do a couple of things now. If you've got a bit of space, that's great. You don't need to have like a yoga mat or anything particular. But I'm going to step back there a little bit, and then I'll do a few things, and then I can come forward and we can talk a bit more. And maybe if you've got some questions, I'll be able to have a little look at what it is that you have asked. So in terms of ages, things I'm going to pick here, maybe the older children might not be so interested in roaring like a lion, but you never know. Sometimes they do, but definitely the other couple of things I'm doing are pretty applicable to most ages. I would say don't be disheartened if you try these things once, twice, even 3 times and they don't work. Keep going. Trust me, keep going. Kids like repetition, they like familiarity, and actually to form a habit, it takes more than 1 or 2 goes. So if you think, oh, they're not really engaging with it, don't worry. And also the other thing is, the funny thing about our ability to co-regulate is, if you just go ahead and do it anyway, they can actually be affected. And so they might not have physically looked like they've joined in doing it with you, but they may still be getting that neuroceptive feedback because you calmed down, because you did the thing. So I get parents who really do get worried. They say, oh, well, we tried doing like online yoga with you, with our kids, and our kids aren't paying attention and stuff, and it doesn't really work. So, and I'm like, don't give up, don't give up. Keep going. Keep going. It takes a little while to build these things up. And also with young children, sometimes what they do, and my 3-year-old daughter does this, so she'll watch something like there's a ballet thing that she really liked on YouTube, and she's not doing it, and I'm thinking, I want to turn this off because she's not watching it. And then I remember, no, I know this. And of course what happens is we're going for a walk later in the day and she suddenly decides to engage me in doing this enormous ballet routine that she's been watching earlier, because she needed to take it in, she needed to process it and do it in her own time, in her own way. So the first thing we're going to do is our superpower breath. Now, you don't need anything at all to this, but if you have got kids who are young, a nice little bean bag or a slightly weighted soft toy like this. This is a Beanie Baby. I have many of these this particular day. I've got a lizard. Is quite useful. And if you do happen to have one of these, I believe it's called a Hoberman sphere. This is quite a good way of visually showing that you're breathing in a nice big way. But you really don't need anything at all. So I'm going to go back here so you can see more of me. And I'm going to ask you whether you're sitting or standing or on a chair. It doesn't really matter. This little bit you can do anywhere. But I'm going to show you how to breathe. So remember me saying about this breath being high up and short being not so useful? Yeah. And can you feel like when you do a little breath like that, your shoulders sort of want to come up and you kind of hold tension. You start holding. The other thing that might happen is that if you're feeling tense and wound up, that you hold the belly area. And so when you're trying to breathe in, what happens is that there's no space, that you're kind of holding it back, and that tension's also affecting this lovely vagus nerve down the front of your body. And there's an inability for you to relax if you've got that tension going on. So the best way to activate a really good breath is to make the belly big and round. Belly breathing is the easiest thing to call it, really. And so I find that for a lot of children, they find it easier to try it lying down first of all, but you can do it sitting up. So we'll start with the sitting up version, and then we'll move around and do a little bit of different things with it. So one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly so you can feel it. And what I would like you to do is see if you can close your eyes, because if you can close your eyes, it makes it easier for you to experience what's happening inside the body. Now, I know not everybody feels safe closing their eyes, so if it doesn't feel good, then you can just kind of do that thing where you look down and it's almost like when you were little and you pretended that you'd shut your eyes, but you hadn't really shut your eyes. You can do that. Okay, because if we're looking around, what happens is we've got more information coming into the brain, and if there's more information coming into the brain, then it means that there's just more for you to process, so that you're not so focused on the thing that we're focusing on. So that's really the simple things. We're trying to shut down too much other information coming in so we can concentrate on one task. Okay, so put one hand on the belly, one hand on the heart, and I'm going to take some big breaths and try and push that hand out when you breathe in. Breathing through your nose. Big round belly. So you can use visual ideas like balloons, blowing up a balloon. And this is why this ball is quite good, because you can do it as a visual. You can say, make yourself big, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. If the child is really struggling, or even the adult is really struggling, you can, what did I just do with my, oh, here he is. You can lie down on the ground, because it's easier to tell that you are making your belly round if you are on the ground, because it's much easier to tell it's going up. So you can take those breaths and push the belly up towards your hand. And with younger kids, what they like to do is have an animal here, because then you can watch the animal have a ride on your tummy as you breathe, so it gives them an incentive to try and breathe in a way that pushes the animal and gives it a little journey. Excellent. So those breaths are really, really useful. Another way you can use one of these balls, and you can get really little ones from, if you're in the UK, shops like Wilko, you can buy them online on Amazon. This is a particularly big one. I think they sell them on eBay, I'm not sure, all over the place. So what you can do with this, if you've got more than one child, it's quite a nice thing to use it as a game, or even just you and a child. So what you do is you grab onto the larger bits of the ball, and you do breathing in and out, and you see how many breaths you can do without speaking, without letting go. And if you do that, then we have to go back to one, and you have to see how many big breaths you can get to. And it's a challenge, which always seems to work well. Kids love a challenge. So you're doing breathing in and out, and in and out, all holding onto the ball, so you can do it as a family. And they love it when we do these kind of interactive things together. So that's another really nice way to use the breath. These kind of breaths are so simple we can forget to do them. And you will find that if you want to start using this kind of technique, it's really important to start using it not in a situation where you really need it, like they've just got upset because they've fallen over or something. You want to start using it at another point, so you start to build up that habit. Then you can remind them when they're starting to feel upset another time that they could choose to use their superpower and change the way they feel. You can't just bring it in suddenly in the state when they're upset if they haven't practiced it before. So a really nice way to remember to use it is to use it as a take 5 breaths. So you use your hand to count 5 big breaths, because about 5 breaths is really enough to start to really notice that change. Again, encourage your child when you're doing these kind of breaths to close their eyes so they can get that sensation of what's happening on the inside. Because what's happening on the inside is a really important skill. And in fact, for me, that is the skill that we are looking for when we are teaching breath and body work and yoga, teaching people to become embodied so they can understand what they're feeling better. There's a fantastic bit of research that's been done that shows that when people can focus inwardly, they have better outcomes in terms of dealing with traumatic experiences, and they have more what's called post-traumatic growth, which is an ability to make more positive changes and outlooks to their life after they've had difficult experiences. So it really is a super skill to encourage. And if I'd learned at a young age, wow, where would I be now? I didn't start doing this stuff till I was well into my 20s. So what you can do is you can do the breath, and it doesn't really matter which hand you start with. You can start with the left or the right. You can start from one side or from the thumb side. Works all ways round. But it's really good because if you say take 5, then there's a signal in your family that everyone can go, oh, take 5, okay, we do this breath. And your kids will start teaching you to do it when they know that you are dysregulated. They'll be like, hey, take 5, Dad, hey. You know, you need to remember. And that's also, again, a fantastic thing because it gives them empowerment. We're trying to empower our children to be able to understand and process their feelings. Because empowered children are just going to go so far in life. It's so fantastic to know that you can do these things for yourself. So we just take those 5 big belly breaths. Every time we go up, we take a breath in. Every time we go down, we take a breath out. Okay, you ready? Let's go. You can close or lower the eyes now. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, and then return to your normal breath. And remember to take their lead in this, because their breath might be shorter than yours. And you can encourage them afterwards to just keep their eyes closed and ask them, can you notice that you feel different? Can you notice that you just had an amazing chance to change how you felt? Do you feel different? And they do really get this. It's a fantastic thing to see blossoming in a child, this understanding of how empowered they can be towards how they feel. And it's really essential that this is grounded in our body, because the frontal lobe part of our brain, the command center that really is where we can reflect and rationalize things, it's not fully developed until we are well into our 20s, our late 20s. So we can't expect our young children to always be able to go and sit and think about what they're doing. What we need to be able for them to reflect is to help them change the way they feel. And actually, this is not so different in adults, even though we have got fully developed frontal lobes. When we are having a hard time, when we're feeling very anxious and stressed, this part of our brain is not really functioning very well. It is because of the way our body is designed. These responses are much more connected to the more primitive parts of our brain, so that we find it harder to step into that rational place. So we also need to help ourselves to regulate through movement and breath to be able to then reflect on what we're doing, especially when we're having tough times. And these things, they can also work like money in the bank. So when we were saying earlier that you can use these kind of skills and then you bring them in when they're needed, when they're having a hard time, but you can't just bring it in when they're having a hard time. When you use these skills and practice them regularly, they're also a bit like putting money in the bank. So you've got this kind of savings, so that your regulation is happening because you are regularly moving and breathing. And that means that when you do come to having a tough time, there's more resource within you or within your child to be able to hold that difficult space, so that you get less emotional ups and downs. And it doesn't mean they're not going to happen. We have been going through some very unusual times of late, and everybody's emotions have been a bit of a roller coaster, and that's okay. That's the important thing to let them know too. So what else can we do? So we can do some more high energy things. So one thing I love to do with children is roar. And actually, one of my dear friends and her daughter have taken up roar o'clock. So at 3:30 every day, they have a roaring session, which I think is a fantastic idea. I never thought doing that. So roaring like a lion, it actually, within traditional yoga, there is a lion pose, which is sticking out your tongue and rolling your eyes back, which is stretching the tongue, the mouth, jaw, and the eyes, and that is helping to relax the face. So that is helping to activate
that calm, connected part of your nervous system. So although it looks a bit strange, it does come from a deep tradition. What I would say is when you're working with roaring, it can just come into a big fun game thing and go all over the place. But what you can do with quite energetic things is you can kind of contain them a little bit. So one of the easiest ways to contain things with kids is to connect their feet to the ground. When they're feeling very high energy, they are kind of, as we are, all up here. And so, you know, when they're upset and they're sitting, if they sat down on a chair when they've had a little fall or something, connect their feet to the ground. And so when you're going to do something like roaring or shaking, which we're going to do in a minute, what you need to do is to try and contain that space a little bit. So how I do this, because I often work with big groups of children as well as on one-to-one, so it's kind of easier if I contain a roar so that it doesn't just end up being absolute chaos with loads and loads of children. So what we do is we start, so we've got space in front of us, and my son loves doing this. I wish he was here right now. I think he's in the paddling pool downstairs. He loves doing this, so we go far apart and then we kind of jump towards each other so that we're kind of right in each other's face when we're roaring, and he really loves doing it like that. That's his joy. My daughter doesn't like doing it so much. She likes for us to do it towards her. She likes the sensation of being roared at. So, you know, everyone finds their way. You know, there is no wrong way. It's really, you know, watch your child. Your children are always giving you answers to what it is that they need. It's just we have to be paying attention a lot of the time and understand that they are actually showing us with their movement what they need. Like lots of kids really like going upside down. Yes, it helps to develop their vestibular balance system, but also it does help to regulate them. They really like it. They like the way it makes them feel. If they like doing it, realize that that's something useful, encourage it. So roaring. So I get them to stretch their claws on their knees, and what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 roars getting louder. Sometimes I do it getting louder and getting quieter. So I would encourage you to have a go at this and let your freak flag fly. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks, because that's an important way to work with children. They really like it when you just let go to the play and the fun, and it does us a lot of good too. Okay, so we're going to take a big breath in. We're going to roar by leaping forwards onto our hands, sticking our tongue out and rolling back our eyes. Are you ready? Take a big breath in. Excellent. Now I'm going to do it a bit louder. You ready? Just a bit louder. Big breath in. One last time. The loudest roar you can. I hope this ear thing I've got in my mic thing doesn't fall out. Okay, right, one more time. Big breath in. Biggest roar you can manage. Excellent. And then you can just see if you can get them to either stand or sit with their eyes closed. You can even come down to what's called pebble or child pose. Just sit there, close your eyes, take a few breaths. See if they can tell you how they feel, and don't be too worried if kids can't find words for their feelings. That doesn't matter. I sometimes give them bits of coloured card or a bunch of cards with pictures of animals on or something, and get them to describe how they're feeling through different things, because in fact they might not have a word for it, and that's okay. So you can use different things as an inroad into discussing feelings. If feelings are too abstract, there's definitely other ways you can approach helping them to express what they're feeling in terms of other things. Have a go. Could be animals, plants, colours, anything. Food, maybe even. Right, so that roaring is a really useful thing. Another thing that I find super duper useful is shaking, and just as a little thing to say at the beginning here, if you or your child have epilepsy, it might not be the thing that works for you. So that's a good thing to know. Otherwise, find different tracks of music, have a lot of fun with it. So shaking is a way of bringing the body and the nervous system into balance. It's what an animal will do when they've had a shock. They'll go and find somewhere they feel safe and they let the body shake. Remember, our bodies do shake when we've had a shock. So it is a way of helping our body to come into balance. And again, it's quite good to contain it, although you can let it just become a crazy fun session. But if you try and contain it by making a kind of firm stance at the beginning and end, that really helps, because it means that there is a kind of enveloped piece of space in which they can have their kind of freedom to let their emotions go, but it also gives them a signal that as a carer or a parent or a teacher, that you are able to contain whatever emotion they have to express. Because children will only really feel safe, or adults do, if they know that you have got the ability to contain what they're feeling. They won't feel safe to express strong emotions if they don't feel that they've got that structure there that's holding them safely. So funnily enough, just creating a nice, strong, firm stance at the beginning and the end can really help. So we're going to stand firmly on the ground. I'm going to put on a little bit of a background sound to help us with this. Ooh. So you can do it by going through the body, you can do it by just shaking in any old way. I like to start with a bit of a stand and take the arms all the way up. You can't see my fingertips now, can you? Okay, so shake the hands, the wrists. You can encourage them to close their eyes, that helps, because that helps it get less silly. Start to bring in the shoulders, loosen the head, loosen the feet. You can do as much or as little as your body is willing to do. The strange thing is, if you're having a good shake, I can say it's like shaking like a jelly, being the ones, or think about how a dog will shake off water. So you can use it as a way of feeling like shaking off anything you really don't want to hang on to, letting it go out of the body. You can have a really good shake. Let the body go loose. If you feel tired, you put your arms up, it goes away. Yee! So you want a good, at least a minute, maybe 2 or 3. You can experiment with different kinds of music. There's like Bhangra, jungle, things with a good beat. There's all kinds of tracks that work. There's Harlem Shake, there's Boom Boom Shake the Room. There's Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. I like a bit of General Levy Incredible, Walking on Sunshine, like Dreaming Away. There's all kinds of songs, but experiment. Have a good shake. Shake. Oh, it's my knew that would happen. I hope you can still hear me. Good. And then what I would do is get them to take a big breath in, reach all the way up, breathe out and go. Breathe in, reach all the way up, and go. You might want to do it 2 or 3 times. And then get them to stand tall, roll back the shoulders, eyes closed, ground the feet down firmly, tuck in your chin, lengthen from the crown of your head. Sometimes I like to visualize it like there's a little thread being pulled that helps me to stand up straight instead of being stiff. You stand up straight in a really kind of relaxed, but still very much standing to your full height way. And just feel the heartbeat slow down and the breath slow down, because the heartbeat and the breath, just like water, they find their own balance. The body knows what to do. So as you can see, those kind of practices, we're not asking the child to calm down, because it's a bit like there's a theory about panic attacks where you sort of go, instead of trying to bring the person to calm down, you try and get them excited, because excitement is a similar level of emotion. And then from transferring it to a more positive thing, then it's easy to bring it down. And this is the same kind of thing. You play into that state where the nervous system is more activated, and you use something to get them feeling something on that level, then it's easier to become calm, rather than trying to get them to calm down, which doesn't always work. So I hope you find these things useful. If you have any questions, there's a little questions box at the bottom of the page here. If anybody would like to add any questions, I'm quite happy to answer them.
So, what else was I going to say? After that, I think I've been shaking around, and now I'm like, oh, I can't remember what I'm trying to say because I'm all in my body and my brain's not so full of stuff. And that is what's so lovely about movement practices. They really help us to get less in our heads, because I don't know about you, but I find if I don't move around enough, then that kind of energy gets sent up into my brain and it starts to make problems that aren't even there, because it has to go somewhere. We are whole bodied creatures, and we kind of spend a lot of our lives going around as thinking we are just our head. Our head has this kind of way of making us feel like it's the only thing there is. But as soon as we drop into being a whole body, and moving and breathing together has the ability to help us get into that very congruent state where we feel very whole. And then when we feel very whole and very present, suddenly the problems don't seem as big, because we're very much here now. And if we can use these just small little things that shouldn't be underestimated, even though they are rather small, these little exercises, they can really help our kids to get this kind of foundation at a young age, so they understand the power that they have within their bodies. I haven't come up with any questions yet, but I'll keep talking. So if you want to know more, there's lots more I could share with you, because I've been doing this stuff for years. I've been working with refugees, teenage mothers, kids with autism spectrum disorders and ADHD, looked after children. I've published some research on that. So all kinds of challenging situations have always been my calling in life. So there's lots I can share with you. I think there'll be some links posted on the recording of this, so you'll be able to contact me through Facebook or YouTube, or I think it might put my website up or something. So I am both under the name Yoga Nova and the Freedom in Me. Okay, right, so, oh, there's the one question. Wait a minute, let's have a look. Do you have any good suggestions for de-stress activities to use with moody teens? I think they may be too self-conscious to do the shaking or lion's break activities. Okay, so I would say, yeah, the lion's not really for teenagers so much, but the shaking could well be, if you can get them to find their own music. That may well be a good way of doing it. Another thing that's quite nice to do with teens is there is a website called clickflowswithan.s.com, and on that they can create their own yoga sequences that they could then do themselves or teach you. That's quite a nice thing to do with older children. Breath work wise, the belly breath works for every age. If you go onto my Yoga Nova channel on YouTube, there's a meditation called Meditation for When You Don't Know What to Do. Brilliant one, because it's a breath in and out. I don't have time to do it now, but it's a particular pattern of breathing in and out, which seems to be a bit like, you know, if you reset yourself to factory settings, if you were a phone or an iPod, it seems to sort of do that to us, because the breathing pattern is enough for the mind to focus on, to be able to give you something to do that keeps you busy, so you don't feel self-conscious about the fact that you're doing some kind of breath meditation weirdy thing. So I find that that has always been a very successful thing with people of all ages, including teenagers I've worked with, because it's just got the right amount of stuff to keep you busy, but helps to really change the way you feel. So that's called the Meditation for When You Don't Know What to Do. So they can try that. You don't have to call it that, but it is a really useful technique, I find, for people of all ages, and it particularly works with kind of self-consciousness, anxiety, people who find it really hard to get into quiet, calm spaces. It's probably the most effective tool I've ever worked with over all the years. Okay, have I got another question, or was that the same one? Nope, that's the same one. Okay, fantastic. Well, it was really lovely to do this on Healthflix, and I'll see you all again. Have a great day. I hope it's as sunny where you are as it is here in Nottingham. Take care. Bye.